And in Britain, there isn't even a language barrier. Well, not much.
All right. Hello. Thank you so much for being part of our annual tour alumni weekend. And this is an exciting time for Europe Through the Back Door. We're just coming off of our best year ever as a tour company. This year we took 600 groups around Europe, over 16,000 travelers. About half of them were return travelers. That's what's very exciting for me. And every year for the last 20 or 25 years, we've dedicated a day like this where we invite people who took our tours last year in for a massing of the scrapbooks. We've got a couple thousand people in town today in 4 different parties just down the street, and we're running back and forth, enjoying the parties and giving these talks. We have 3 different venues, and all day long we're giving 1-hour little features on our various tours so people can understand what our tours are all about and hopefully join us. During this alumni week, we have our guides flying in from Europe. We've flown in over 100 guides from all over Europe, and we've got a series of almost all day long brainstorming sessions every day with different tour groups, different groups of tour guides, brainstorming, sharing ideas, sharing lessons they learned from their experience, so that next year we have better itineraries than ever. We know that your time is limited. We know that your vacation dollar is precious. And when you sign up with one of our tours, we really want you to have all the joy that you can imagine. We even choreograph it with music. And we would like you to enjoy the maximum travel fun for every mile, minute, and dollar you have for your vacation. So thanks so much for being here. This is for Britain and for Scotland. And I just out of curiosity, how many of you here have been on one of our tours before? Raise your hands, please. There you go. So a lot of experienced travelers. How many of you have been on more than one of our tours? Raise your hands. Thank you very much for supporting us. We have a very innovative system where any tour company gives you a little incentive if you're a return customer. We have a cumulative incentive, so it adds up. Every tour you take, you get the same amount more, and it adds up and adds up. I was just at the party for a lot of our tours down the street, and we gave away a little prize to somebody who had been on 14 of our tours. They were the most well-traveled. Actually, the world record holder in our company is somebody who just signed up for their 25th Rick Steves tour. And I'll tell you, we're done making money off of this person. They got such a big discount. So, how many of you are from out of state? Raise your hands, please. Well, thank you for coming. I hope you enjoy our beautiful corner of the United States. I hope you can enjoy the whole day here. It's all hands on deck at Europe Through the Back Door. Our offices, our shop is open till 7 o'clock. We got talks like this at 3 different venues, and when you came in, you got that yellow sheet of paper that gives you the whole schedule, everything that's happening today. Also, I want to remind you that we are streaming, so we've got thousands of people watching in from all over the country, in fact, all over the world. So those of you who are streaming with us, thanks for watching. And if you want to know all the schedule for today's streaming, you can look on our website at ricksteves.com, and we're just pleased to be able to amplify this sort of festival of our love of Europe out to anybody who wants to watch us thanks to streaming. A couple of quick details. First of all, because we're streaming and everything, this is a 12-hour event streaming, and we have to be very punctual. And anytime you give a guide a mic, it's hard to keep him stop talking. And we've got three guides on the stage now, and we've got exactly 55 minutes before we're going to get out of here and then go on for the next party and the next talk. I will remind you, we're going to go until 12:45. And then Roy and Liz, who you'll meet in a moment, are going to have an interview for our streaming audience. And then they will join our other guides down the street in what we're calling the Tour Cantina. We're celebrating travel, and of course, we'd love you to travel with us. And if you want to know more about the tour, this is designed for us to, in a very sort of fast and snappy way, explain the tours to you all together, but so you have all the time in the world with our guides to talk about the intimate details of the tour, or even if you're not going to take one of our tours and you're interested in traveling to this area, you can join our guides in the Tour Cantina and talk about the details there. So we'll be getting you out of here in about an hour, and then you can go to the Tour Cantina just down the street and spend all the time you want there with small groups talking to the various guides. I also want to remind you that tonight in this location here, the last event of the day, I'm giving just a goofy thing we call the Irreverent History of Europe Through the Back Door. And we've been at this for 30 years. Our company's called Europe Through the Back Door today. It was so rough and tumble in the beginning, I think it would be more accurately called Europe Through the Gutter. And I've put together some fun slides, dredged up some slides from way back then, and you'll see exactly from where we came. It's a fun and entertaining hour and a half, and if you'd like to join us again, it's right here. It's free. There's plenty of seats available, and it is at 7 o'clock. About the handouts, you've got the yellow sheet that gives you a rundown on everything we're talking about today. You've got the big, colorful booklet that explains all of our tours. And right now we're talking about Britain, and that's on page 56 in that book. So that gives you the itinerary of what we'll be doing. But we got British and Irish and Scottish tours, and that's in the area of 52 to 58, pages 52 to 58 in your Travel Dreams hymnal, okay? Everything in our shop is 20% off today. We're thankful that you've traveled all the way to Edmonds to be with us today. And if you need any gear, any books, any DVDs, any luggage, whatever, it's down there. It's open till 7. Online, the same thing, 20% off if you get the code and follow the prompts. And right now, I want to introduce to you our guides that have joined us. And because of the time limit, I'm going to go pretty quickly through the itinerary, but we will have plenty of to talk to Roy and to talk to Liz. But right now, I'd like just to let Roy and Liz introduce themselves to you. Roy Nichols was the man that I first was traveling with in Britain. Back when we were staying in youth hostels, Roy ran a youth hostel in the south of England. I didn't know where we were going tomorrow with my group. It was just me and 8 people on a minibus. We'd spread out the map and Roy would explain to me what's good. Finally, I said, Roy, you should be a guide instead of telling me how to fake it here. And Roy joined us, and he's been with us now for ages. And then Liz is one of our newest guides, and I actually had the joy of traveling with Liz. Her first fully guided tour, she happened to have the boss as a tour member, and she did a very, very good job. So I'd like just let Roy Nichols introduce yourself, and then Liz Lister.
Good morning. Oh, so I should say good afternoon, everyone. As you can tell from the accent, I'm English. I live in the south of England. This is my 26th year with Rick. Somebody did mention that if it had been a prison sentence, I would have probably been long since released. But it's been a wonderful 26 years, and it's wonderful to see yet more people coming through, and hopefully come to see us in England and the British Isles generally. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you can tell from my accent, I'm born, bred, live and guide in Scotland. I guide the Best of Scotland tour. I retired 4 years ago from my first career, and this is my second career, which is the polar opposite, and I'm absolutely loving every minute of it, even when Rick comes onto my first tour. It was a baptism of fire. I survived, and as I was telling my fellow guides, in a few weeks' time, we're hoping that I can come off the medication.
Thank you, Liz. All right. So we'll talk more with Roy and Liz in a moment, but I'm going to just quickly go through these slides here. For more information, obviously, go to ricksteves.com, and if you click into the tour section, there you can get interviews with our guides, video clips about our tours, and for me, something very important, candid, unvarnished feedback from the people who trusted us last year on how the tour worked for them. How were the hotels? How were the restaurants? How were the guides? How were the drivers? All of this very important stuff. It's a huge leap of faith for you to trust us for your vacation, and we need to earn that. And if you go there, you can see how it worked for other people. Our tours are not right for absolutely everybody. In fact, when you have that brochure that I mentioned, in it is a DVD, which is about a 1-hour intimate sort of front seat on our tour, just so you can see what it's like to be on the tour. A lot of people look at this DVD and they think, my goodness, this is as if it's designed to scare away the high maintenance people. And that's exactly right. There's a lot of different kind of tours, and we are a very experiential, hands-on, carry your own bag, stay in characteristic hotels kind of tour. Great for a lot of people, and a hellish vacation for a lot of others. So we need to get the right people on board, and that's part of what today is all about. So you can learn about that. You can follow us on Facebook at Rick Steves on Facebook. I always give a little behind-the-scenes look. You could even drill into the Facebook page and look back at the beautiful 2 weeks I had with Liz just this summer, with video clips and how I fell in love with a little baby sheepdog and all this sort of thing. So a lot of intimate, candid, behind-the-scenes look at Rick Steves on Facebook. This is the booklet that has the DVD in it. This is the booklet that has all the descriptions of our tours. Even if you're not going to take one of our tours, these itineraries are really smart, and you can do the itinerary yourself, and that's something we're very enthusiastic about. A long time ago, I wrote the handbooks for the tours. People were swiping these handbooks in the classes I taught. I was trying to sell tours. They were taking the handbooks for the tours to do it on their own. It occurred to me, these little tour handbooks are driving decent people to theft. They need to be available for sale. So I made the book where people could buy it. I honestly put everything I knew about how to do the tour in there so they could do the tour without me. And that's how our tour, our family of guidebooks was born. And today they're the best-selling guidebooks for every corner of Europe, and they still function as the handbooks for people who want us to do the hard work. I do want to remind you, if you're going to sign up on a tour in the next couple of days, there's $100 off as part of this festival we're having now. So whether you're watching online or if you're here in person, if you do sign up for a tour, be sure you get your $100 discount if it is during this festival time. Very quick review about our tours. Small groups, that's critical. Not 50 people on a 50-seat bus, 22 to 28 people on a 50-seat bus. Real teaching. This is so important, not just trivial pursuits and fun little gimmicks, but real teaching, so you understand the context of this history and this art and these cultures. We've got our guides that are trained all together. That's why we flew everybody to Seattle this week, and we're having a week series of brainstorming sessions. We've got small family-run hotels generally and wonderful restaurants. No extras, no tipping, everything's included. We charge a little more up front, and then the guide is on your side. That is fundamental. When the dust settles, it's not more expensive, it's probably less expensive, and you've got the best paid guide in Europe on your side instead of taking you shopping for kickbacks and this sort of thing. This is our staff of guides, and I'm just so thankful and proud to be able to let people who want a, quote, Rick Steves tour trust our guides. For 25 years, I led these tours. For the last 10 years, I've been taking the tours, knowing that my guides can do a better job in their area of expertise than I can. Whether it's Colin here in Scotland, or Roy in England, or whatever, we've got guides that love this work, and they will be your friend and your teacher and your expert, making sure things go smoothly. As we mentioned, I was doing tours with Roy way back when we were in minibuses. The first time we ever went more than a minibus, we did 2 minibuses, me in one minibus and Roy in the other minibus. This was pre-cell phone. We had hankies we'd hang out the window to communicate. If you look at our tour map, this is the spaghetti map that has 35 different itineraries. We're focusing right in on Britain and on Scotland here. I'm going to talk about Britain first, and then we'll go up to Scotland. You'll get the latest edition of our country book when you sign up on any of our tours, whether it's London or Scotland or England. In the old days, we did the best of Britain in 22 days. Because Americans had longer vacations. We have the shortest vacations in the rich world, and if you offer a 22-day tour, there's not enough people to be able to take it. So we've broken this up now, and instead of 22 days, Britain and Scotland, we've got 14 days of Britain with a look at Wales, or England with a look at Wales, and 10 days in Scotland. A little more in Scotland because we're learning more about Scotland. We've got some great Scottish guides. So this is the route for England, and this is the route for Scotland. And I'm going to ask Roy to take us on just a very quick review of the itinerary for our 14 days or whatever. Roy, what do we do? And I'll follow with the laser pointer here.
Right, we start in Bath, down in the southwest of England, this wonderful Georgian city, but also with incredible Roman remains, up to Stow-on-the-Wold in the Cotswolds. And the Cotswolds is that quintessential English countryside, thatched cottages, stone buildings, wonderful area. Look like Downton Abbey all the time. up through Ironbridge Gorge. This is the centre of the Industrial Revolution. Remember, the beginnings of the industrial world were started in this small little area and kicked off industrialisation all over the rest of the world. Then we cross over into Wales. Now, although it's part of the United Kingdom, Wales is a country in its own right. It might not have the same government, but its own language and its own culture, very, very distinct from England. We spent 2 days exploring North Wales with its heritage of the slate industry in Conwy. From there, we crossed back into England, going northwards up past the industrial cities of Manchester and Liverpool, up to the English Lakes District, on a much smaller scale than Switzerland, but very reminiscent. The mountains only go up to 3,000–4,000 feet, but remember, it's quality rather than quantity. Beautiful, beautiful area. From there, we then cross over the Pennines, and we go via Hadrian's Wall. Now, I'm an archaeologist by profession, and Hadrian's Wall is one of the greatest archaeological sites in the world. Even after 2,000 years, it's stunning, and we spend many, many hours exploring that. Then down to York, this great medieval city, the second city of England throughout medieval times, with one of the most glorious churches. And it's the largest church west of the Alps, with something like 2/3 of the medieval stained glass in the whole of England in this one building. But a wonderful medieval city in its own right. And then from York, taking the sensible route, we catch a train all the way down to London. Now, Dr. Johnson said that any man who's tired of London is tired of life. And London is a wonderful, wonderful city. It'll almost feel like coming home to you, because you'll have seen London in films and you'll have read about it in books and things. And it's a wonderful, wonderful city to explore.
Very nice. Thank you, Roy. And Liz, I think we'll go through the Scottish itinerary later after we do England, because we've just been in a frame of mind for England now. So I think we'll stay focused on England, and then we'll let Liz explain the itinerary for Scotland after that. This is just a selfie I took. I like to take selfies with a lot of people in them. This is with Liz's tour, and this is the kind of fun I have when I get to not shave and really be on vacation and follow Liz around. But I had my notepad there, and I learned a heck of a lot while I was traveling up in Scotland. Okay, so we're going to go around England now, and I like to, everybody flies into Heathrow, but you go from Heathrow directly out to Bath. You get over jet lag in this elegant, genteel city instead of brutal London, you see, and you finish with a finale in London. It makes so much sense. So you'll meet your guide in Bath. Bath is a Georgian city. Georgian is what we call neoclassical, King George, the same time of our revolution. And this was all this neoclassical architecture, and Bath is an amazing city. And when you have a guide as knowledgeable as our guides, Roy and his partners, you will understand what was going on in Georgian England, but you'll also know the many layers of history. This goes all the way back to Roman times, when Bath was called Aquasulis, and big shots from London would head out to the spa, the resort of Aquasulis, to take a bath. Eventually, I don't know exactly how, but it became just called Bath. But when you look there, you can see the Roman bath, 2,000 years old, when you are there, and go to the wonderful museum and even see the Roman goddess that was there at the Roman town of Aquasulis. Our guides and the local guides throughout will bring these cities to life. Much as Roy or Liz would be capable of giving you the whole story, we like to get you a local voice. So many times over the course of the tour, we will hire a local guide to show you around, and that gives us that different voice, that different narrative. We've got charming museums, fascinating museums. There's a costume museum in Bath that I just love. And every night, you're in these towns with a hotel located in the center. I really like a hotel in the center, because if you're interested in some street theater after dinner, you can just jump onto the Bizarre Bath Walk. It's one of the funniest evenings I've ever had in Europe, and it's right there, a 10-minute walk from your hotel, and you're there meeting these stand-up comedians, and for a few bucks, they'll take you around the town. Remember, your hotels are central, so you are oriented, you are capable, you've got the guidebook, you've got the map, you've got the support of your guide, and if some people just want to hang out and relax at the hotel, and other people want to do more interesting things, you've got a world of opportunities. From Bath, we side trip down. You'll notice Bath is 3 nights, and we have 1 day to explore south of there. Wells is beautiful with its cathedral. Wells is the smallest cathedral city in England, I think. A city is a city because it's got a cathedral. So if it's got a cathedral, even if it's as small as Edmonds here, it's a city. Wells is a city. You will see this cathedral with its great architecture, and you'll learn about the dissolution of the monasteries. Henry VIII, remember in his squabble with the church, decided to take over the monasteries so he could have the power that the church had. Today we've got parks with ruined abbeys all over England, and you'll see a few of those. Glastonbury may be the most striking. Of course, you've got Holy Grail lore. You've got the Tor, you've got the well, and you've got a guide who can give you all sorts of chilling stories about the search for the Holy Grail, and prehistoric England. We all know about Stonehenge, but my favorite circle is Avebury. And Roy and I went to Avebury for years and years with our groups, and we like Avebury because you can walk among the stones, you can touch the stones. Stonehenge, you've got barbed wire at your knees. So, there's a lot of university towns, there's a lot of Madonnas and children, there's a lot of abbeys, there's a lot of stone circles. Trust that we've scouted for you, and you will have the most interesting and balanced and diverse itinerary possible. But Avebury is very romantic to me, especially when you have your guide to set the tone. The Cotswolds, Roy mentioned the Cotswolds, like Downton Abbey and so on, and I'm a big fan of the Cotswolds. Of course, you can't have fancy buildings today without a lot of wealth in the old days, and that wealth came from sheep. And what's interesting in so many cases is you have wealth from something like sheep and wool, and then something changes, and this rich area suddenly has the economic rug pulled from under a seat, a wool rug, I guess, and then it is so poor that nobody bothers to change the buildings. And then it's discovered centuries later, beautifully preserved because it was basically mothballed, and you got these amazingly charming towns because of the wealth and because of the poverty, and then today resurgent. This is a great opportunity to get a look at the elegance of old England. We'll visit these towns, we'll stay in them, we'll even visit Stanway House, and if we're lucky, Lord Needpath is there. And somebody died, and now he's not Lord Needpath, but he's the Earl of something. The Earl of Weems, but he's impoverished nobility, and he's got this tuxedo with patches on his elbows, and he's a character, he's eccentric, and he opens up his castle, his palace, once a week so people can wander through, and he gives a little tour, and we learn about that. So these are the little intimate slices of England that we'll enjoy in our travels. We stop in Blenheim. There's a lot of great palaces in the countryside of England. Blenheim is my choice for the best, and you've got Madame Tussauds garden party, sort of frozen in time there. And then, as Roy mentioned, we go up to Ironbridge Gorge. Now, I'm really interested in industrial age history, and that's what made Britain just really the empire upon which the sun never set. And the Industrial Revolution, in a lot of ways, was born right here in Ironbridge, where they first made modern kind of iron. And you'll learn all about the technology that you'll go over the first iron bridge, which gave the area its name, which was built in 1776. And you'll be able to walk through the town and learn about the birth of the Industrial Revolution. From there, we cross into Wales, and I like northern Wales. We've covered all of Wales over the years, and this itinerary has fine-tuned, and we go to the north, where you've got the Snowdon National Park, you've got industrial age canals that you can walk along, and you've got Bodenant Gardens. English and Welsh people love their gardens, and there are some amazing gardens. I'm not even that into gardens, but I love my visits to the great gardens of England, and this is one of the very best. You'll go there with your tour before going to the great Caernarfon Castle. I think you can say there's more castles per square mile in northern Wales than anywhere else, because those English had to subdue the insurgents up there, those Welsh, and you have to have a lot of castles there to assert your British power. So you've got King Edward's castles all across North Wales. We'll visit what a lot of people think is the most striking, Caernarfon Castle, and we'll make our home base in a town called Conwy, C-O-N-W-Y, and Conwy is in the shadow of this great castle, and I just like to be right there on the main street with a hotel where I can step across the street into a pub, where I can walk down to the waterfront and enjoy fish and chips with the locals, where I can catch some crabs with the children. There's all sorts of fun, intimate village and town life going on, and in Wales, a lot of the people will be speaking Welsh. It is so quintessentially Welsh, and it's striking the variety and the diversity that you find right there within Britain. Going into the pubs is a lot of fun, and anywhere on this trip, we got to remember pub is public house, okay? Public house, it's where the neighborhood goes to gather. It's the extended living room. And there we're going to learn with your guide how to order a beer and how no man who's self-respecting would ever order a half a pint like this guy. You order a pint, all right? Or you weather the insults of your friends that look at you like you're a sissy. I'm going to go really really quick, and then I'm going to let Roy and Liz correct me on some things or straighten out anything or embellish what I've been saying here. But in the interest of time, we'll keep it running along. Northern Wales is famous for its slate. It was built on the slate industry, and we'll see a lot of that as we travel around, and we will visit the Slate Museum up there, and you can actually get an understanding of how they split the slate and how most of the roofs of England were covered with the slate from Wales, and how that's good news, and it's also bad news as it's a sort of a hard scrabble corner of Great Britain to this day. Then we drive past the industrial cities and we go to the Lake District, Cumbrian Lake District, famous for Wordsworth poems and Beatrix Potter and all of that natural wonder. A lot of the tourists go to Windermere, that's the famous name. We've tried everything around there. We used to stay in a youth hostel in Windermere back when I was with Roy, and now we go to Keswick in the north, and we really like the north of the lakes. This is the classic view of the Lakes District, and with your guide, you're going to know just when to catch the boat, where to hop off to take a little walk, and if you've got the energy, how you can climb one of those mountains. This is called Beachy Head, and I've never heard Roy say this here, but it's a quantity...
I'm sorry, Rick, it's not Beachy Head.
Oh, it's not Beachy Head.
Cat's Bells.
Cat's Bells. Thank you. Beachy Head is where I met Roy almost, way down in the south of England. Cat's Bells, right. And I've never heard Roy explain it this way, but I like it. Quality over quantity.
Oh, yes, of course. Quality over quantity.
Because you can walk out from your B&B before breakfast. You could walk up here, and in 2 hours, you could be on top of the mountain. Not Beachy Head.
Not Beachy Head.
Cat's Bells, all right, thank you. And just to be up there is you got your commanding feel about the Lakes District. Our home base, Keswick. And Keswick is cool because it's a real town. I like to stay in places where our hotels are right in the center, where you can step out. There's a little pub here called the Dog and something.
Dog and Gun.
The Dog and Gun. And if you like dogs, you'll find dogs there have all the rights of human beings in this pub.
Yeah, they're welcome. It's not something that's excluded. I used to have a wonderful border collie called Meg, and she would always come to the pub with me, and it's part of the social essence of visiting public houses that you take your wife and the dog with you.
In fact, Roy took me to a church once in the Cotswolds, and I'm sitting on a 500-year-old wooden pew in this amazing stone church, and I'm noticing a groove on the little decorative top of the pew. And that groove, Roy explained to me, is from the shepherds that took their dogs to church for generations. That would lash them there, and that's where the money came from to build that church. And the shepherds, the dogs, and all, that's the sort of cohesiveness we look for in our coverage. Our hotels, we got 25 people, so we can't stay in a little B&B, but we stay in charming guest houses, generally beautifully located, and we get to know the moms and the pops that run these things. That's a fun part of our tourism, and we like the English fry. A lot of people call it a heart attack on a plate, or a plate of cardiac arrest. There's a lot of nicknames for it, but you've got that traditional fry if you like, and you always have a healthy alternative. So you've always got your fruit and your yogurt as well if you prefer. But again, this is Wordsworth country, and this is where any tourist can become a poet. Another stone circle, you can stop by, or it's just right off the road, Castlereagh Stone Circle. And here's a kind of case when the guide has some flexibility. Because we run a very punctual, tight ship, we're able to stop the bus, get out, and check out our own stone circle. Your guide knows just where to take the bus to hike along Hadrian's Wall, and to imagine 2,000 years ago, the Romans spread as far north as the north edge of Britannia. And then they kind of looked at those barbarian Scots up there and they thought, nah, let's call this an empire. We'll build a wall right here, okay? That may be a little simplistic, but you're going to walk along the wall and learn the real story from your guide. But to walk on that wall, Hadrian's Wall, on the north edge of England, it is just a mind blower. And that's been a lot of fun for groups that I've been with over the ages, and I know you'll enjoy that too. And then we round the corner and we head down to York. And York is, I was just there a couple months ago. I just can't get enough of York. It was a very important place in centuries past. And today you'll have your guide that does what you should do locally, and for sure you'll have a walking tour of the historic center of the town and along the medieval ramparts. And then you've got organized time in the cathedral, and you've got free time to see what museums you might like. There's the wonderful York Castle Museum, which takes you back 100 years ago just to this area. You can follow local pensioners around and actually hear them reminiscing about when that candy actually did fill the shelves when they were children. You can go to the Great Transportation Museum in York, which is the most wonderful train museum I've been to anywhere in Europe. And also you can go to the Viking Viking Museum. There's a couple of wonderful Viking museums that talk about the time when York was called Jorvik. 1,000 years ago, a Norwegian Viking community there establishing York. Always you have the pubs, and when you're in these pubs, you are welcome to, half of the dinners are included, and half of the dinners are on your own, and we like to have that independence, and you've got the guidebook, and within a short walk of your hotel, you've got gastropubs. In the old days, British food was laughable. Today, it is really it's edible. It's edible.
If we weren't friends, Rick, if we weren't
And then you finish with the finale in London. And boy, I just can't get enough of London. I think there's 4 cities in Europe that really deserve 1 week: London, Paris, Rome, and Istanbul. And we started our 1-week winter break program when I went to London for a week off in the winter. And just to fly in, cheap flight, great hotel right downtown, wonderful guides, a tube and a bus pass that lets you go everywhere quicker than you could with a taxi because you're underneath the traffic, and a guide that helps you sort through all the options. It's a beautiful thing. When you look at London, you'll get the guidebook, and whether you take the Best of England tour, which covers a couple of days in London, or the 1-week London tour, you'll have it all there. If you're taking the Britain tour, I would recommend you give yourself a little extra time at the end. You'll be well oriented with your guide, and then you'll have time to go out and do your own thing. Very important. You will get the London guidebook with your tour, and you'll want to cover the basics regardless. You'll want to see the Tower Bridge, and that leads right over to the Tower of London. And with the help of your guide, you'll know how to do the Tower of London, experience the Tower of London without waiting in long lines. You'll get to see the crown jewels and take a Beefeater tour. You'll go to Buckingham Palace and see the changing of the guard. And Roy, what is it about pageantry in London? When we're in London, how will we see that sort of thing?
well, I mean, there's the obvious ceremonies, things like changing of the guard. This is a ceremony that takes place in lots of different places because it's the soldiers given the duty to protect the monarch. They are the Queen's bodyguard. Most of these regiments have histories going back to the 16th and 17th century, and so they guard all the great palaces, of course, Buckingham Palace, but St. James's, Horse Guards, and places like that. And remember, the British love their ceremony. If there's nothing else that we do well, it's ceremony. And they really are spectacles, but of course, with a historic, social, and political purpose behind it. So
which
very,
you would
very
not
important.
know without a guide. And that's one reason why it's so much fun to see a parade in London. But if you have your guide, you actually understand what's going on, why this ceremony, what's happening, where to stand for the best view and the best photographs and so on. When you're in London, you want to use the public transportation. It just feels good to be going like a local. And their tube system is great. And the tube pass comes with the buses, so you'll go on the double-decker buses as well. You can cruise down the Thames River. We love to take our groups on the boat from Westminster Bridge down to the Tower of London. You can even stay on that bridge and go all the way down to Greenwich if you like. You've got free time to go on other sites, for instance, the Great Eye of London for a good view all around. You'll have time for the British Museum. You know, London is an expensive city in a lot of ways, but most of its great sites are free. And you'll find some of the greatest museums anywhere in the world are right there. The British Museum is newly renovated, and it gives you a great look at so much. It's just a textbook of Western civilization, with especially the Elgin marbles from the Parthenon in Athens, the British Library, where you can, so much of what the British Empire was all about was literature and knowledge and organizing, and you've got there all of the wonders of the British Empire in the British Library, and you will see that. You've got the pageantry and the heritage of the halls of Parliament, and if you know when to go, you can actually go inside and see the Hammerbeam roof of the Great Hall and actually see the halls of Parliament, either the Lords or the Commons, in action. And just across the street is Westminster Abbey. And of course, with your guide, you will know how to get into Westminster Abbey without a lot of line. And throughout Britain, you've got these docents at all the sites, at all the great sites, that love to talk, love the story, and have a charming way to share what is really important to them. Along Whitehall from Westminster up to Trafalgar Square, you'll take a walk with your guide, and you may be able to pop into the Churchill Museum and the Cabinet War Room, where Churchill was running running the government underground in a bunker during those darkest days during World War II. And then at the top of the street, you've got Trafalgar Square, and right there within 100 yards of each other, you got St. Martin's in the Field Church, you've got the National Portrait Gallery and the National Gallery. If you're thinking of the great collections of paintings in all of Europe, the National Gallery is right up there with the Prado and the Louvre. There are so many wonderful parks, and when I'm walking around London with a guide, I understand what's the story about the parks and what are the monuments all about. Remember, it can be very hot in Britain. I was there on the hottest day, it was over 100 degrees, and it can be very cold also. If you go in the winter, you can ice skate in London at Somerset House, but probably when you're in London, it won't be that hot and it won't be that cold, but it'll just be wet, okay? And I just want to be straight with you. This is Britain, just like Seattle's a beautiful place because it rains a lot. You got a lot of rain in Britain, and my friends in Britain always remind me, there's no bad weather, just inappropriate clothing. You got to get out. You got to do the sightseeing. You need good shoes for the wetness. You need a good waterproof jacket and an umbrella. And then we don't get rained out. I can promise you that. We are out there, rain or shine, doing these sightseeing. And if you're properly prepared for that, it does work just fine. Okay, across the river, London has been really booming, and what was old rundown area of the South Bank is now a beautiful promenade, the Jubilee Promenade and the great Millennium Bridge going across. And then in the old center of town, of course, you've got the Tower of London, the castle that was built when the Normans invaded in 1066. Wonderful Norman architecture, lots of heritage. You got your Beefeater tour. Your guide will make sure you get that Beefeater tour. You'll learn all about the heads that were chopped off there, and you'll learn about the crown jewels. You'll see the crown jewels, again, with the help of your guide. In the evening, you've got free time, and there's lots of ways to go to plays. I never go to London without checking out a play, and you'll get help from your guide on that. Roy, what is the general plan for the evening entertainment for the London tour?
Well, when you're on the London tour, we have 2 or 3 evenings to quite deliberately plan so that you have free time to do your own thing. And as Rick said, the theatre in London is second to none in the world. It's also one of the least expensive. And whether you're into musicals or Shakespeare or straight theatre, there's an incredible choice. So what we do is we go along to Leicester Square, get you oriented, go through the list of plays, the things that perhaps you should see that's new at the time, so the good old standbys like The Mousetrap, things like that, and help you to go around and make a choice, and then you can access the theatre from there.
And you do have options, and rather bringing everybody to, Les Miserables, it's good for you to plan in advance that way. And if you're into Shakespeare, you can see the Royal Shakespeare Company. Not everybody wants to do that, but you got a chance for theatre in the round right there at the wonderful Shakespeare Theatre in London. So you need to make your plans that way, and your guide will help you. Okay, now we're going to go up to Scotland. And I was just there this summer, and I took our Scotland tour because I knew I was frankly pretty weak on Scotland, and I wanted to have a local guide, and I wanted to dedicate 10 or 12 days to Scotland, and I was very lucky to have Liz Lister for my guide. And Liz, can you take us just around the itinerary here, and I'll just follow you with my laser pointer, and tell us what we're going to do in 10 days in Scotland.
Okay, well, we start in the capital city of Scotland, in Edinburgh. It's 2 World Heritage Sites, and by 2015 it might even be 3 World Heritage Sites. So nice and compact, easy to walk around in, easy to begin to soak up the culture of Scotland. And then on Wednesday we meet our driver and we start on the road, and we travel to St Andrews through Fife, the Kingdom of Fife. St Andrews, as you can see, is on what's called East Neuk in Scotland. Now, Neuk is a cosy corner, and when the wind comes blasting in from the North Sea, you might not think it's a cosy corner, but it's certainly a beautiful town to see. The university town, the most ancient of the universities in Scotland, and of course nowadays the pilgrims come for golf, because it's the home of golf. And we travel on from Fife up into Perthshire, where beautiful rural Perthshire, we're beginning to pass over what's known as the Highland Boundary Fault and into the true Highlands of Scotland. So we travel through big tree country, absolutely stunning scenery, and on to Kenmore and Pitlochry and the heart of rural Perthshire. And from there, we travel up to the true Highlands, up to Inverness, arriving there on the Friday. Inverness is a booming European city, more and more people working from home now, so it's one of the areas in the EU which is expanding most, an expanding city. So beautiful to spend time there. And on Saturday, we visit the scene of Culloden, the last pitched battle on mainland Britain. And for many of our tourists that are visiting Scotland, it's because they have history. And so for many, it's a very emotional experience. And from the battlefield of Culloden, we travel to Clava Cairns, and Roy is an expert on Clava Cairns, an archaeological site in Scotland. Then on down the side of Loch Ness, travelling along, trying to spot Nessie as we go along. And we pass over the Caledonian Canal. And from there, we're travelling literally across from the east to the west of Scotland and along another fault line, the Caledonian fault line. And we arrive on the west coast to magnificent sunsets because it never rains in Scotland. You all know that, of course. But we say in Scotland, well, at least rain, it's only whiskey in the making. So if we didn't have our rain, we wouldn't have our whiskey. So these beautiful sunsets in Oban, and on the way we pass through Glencoe, the Glen of Weeping, the Glen of Sorrow, and we learn the story of the massacre of Glencoe and how the MacDonalds were betrayed while they slept in their beds. From Oban, we take a short ferry trip across from one time to another time, to the beautiful island of Iona, where you step back in time to the serene spiritual tranquility of Iona. Crossing on the way across Mull, the Isle of Eagles, where you're spotting golden eagles, great sea eagles, and otters, if you're lucky enough. And then on the final day, we travel back from Oban via Stirling with its castle, which is a sort of miniature version of Edinburgh, back to Edinburgh itself, where I guess we'll take a little bit of last-minute shopping before the final dinner and departure.
Thank you, Liz. Can you imagine the delight of just listening to a beautiful voice like Liz's for 10 days as you're going through Scotland? It gets you very tuned in to all things Scottish. Liz, you mentioned Saturday you're on Loch Ness or whatever. The tour actually has a route where you're in the same city each time?
We stay for 2 evenings in each of our points, so you get a chance to rest, relax, and you're not moving on every day.
And the weekends and the work days and so on are all figured out, so it's a real trick to schedule these things smartly, and you can't get everything all the time, but it is a lot of thought that goes in behind the scenes in putting these itineraries together, and that's why Liz and her fellow Scottish tour guides are meeting and talking and debating about these different tours. So I'm going to take you just in 10 or 15 minutes here through Scotland, and of course from Edinburgh you got what was a lake separating the Georgian town and the old town. On the top you got the castle on the rock. From there, 1 mile going down the Royal Mile, the most densely populated part of Europe in its day, with the first skyscrapers ever, going very historically down to the Holyrood Palace. This is the Royal Mile here. David Hume, a lot of great philosophers in Scotland, and of course this is the year the Scottish people are voting for if they're going to be independent or not. And you'll feel a lot of Scottish pride. It'll be an exciting time to be in Scotland as Scotland decides, should they stay with Britain?
And we're just actually dealing with contractors at the moment, because we do vote for independence. We're rebuilding that Hadrian's Wall.
We're I'm learning things all the time. So this is an exciting time to see just where the Scottish flag is going to head, and it's a thrilling time, really, and a challenging time also. It's a very complicated issue, but regardless of how the vote goes, you can go to the new Scottish Parliament building. For the first time since 1707, the Scots have their own Parliament building. It's just a few years old, and we can go there and we can tour that. I'll tell you, it was so fun, whoever your guide is in Scotland, to have a good guide who really can explain to you all the excitement that's going on, how to appreciate Robbie Burns, how to appreciate Bonnie Prince Charlie, how to understand that rain is just whiskey in the making. I've never heard that before. That's the fun of this work. Well, there's the castle, and this is from just in front of our hotel, basically, when I was with Liz, and we took an orientation walk that very first night, and I remember standing right here thinking, all right, we're going to learn about Scotland. Here's that Royal Mile with the train station just underneath it, and we can see some of the beautiful architecture along that main drag with the cathedral, St. Giles Cathedral. And here are those very early skyscrapers in their day. You can imagine the density of the population, and of course you got Deacon Brodie Lore, a good guy by day and a scary guy by night, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That's where that was from. You got the great writers, Scott Burns and Stevenson from Edinburgh right there. And with your guide, you will learn as you walk down the Royal Mile what's going on. What about the Knox, the great reformer in St. Giles Church? And what about the Reformation? And you can look at the stained glass, and you can think of the fervor as Knox took to the pulpit and explained to people how they can read the Bible in English or rather than in Latin. And it's enough to get me sort of wearing a cap and getting a feather for a pen. That's actually in Knox's house, where you can dress up and get a photo op if you like. And then further down, you can try the whiskey. And not only try the whiskey, but learn about the whiskey from a man who's passionate about whiskey and who knows just how to let you appreciate it. I always buy a small bottle of whiskey, and I keep it with me on my Scottish tours, because it just feels right when I'm in Scotland to have a little nip at the end of a long day. And when I'm in England, I have a nice tea. And when I'm in Ireland, I have a good Guinness. But when I'm in Scotland, check out that whiskey. It's quite nice. This is the new Parliament building that you can see at the bottom of the mile. You've got beautifully renovated, gorgeous museums. The National Gallery right there. You got music in the streets, whether the Edinburgh Festival's on or not. You've got a lot of great music. And if the royal family's in town, you may well have a garden party down at Holyrood Palace, and you'll see the local ladies dressed up with their fancy hats. Like you got pageantry in Britain, in England, you got pageantry in Scotland, and you've got the haggis you can try if you are bold, and your guide will hold your hand as you try that local specialty. And then we head north and we stop at St. Andrews, where golf was famously born, and check out the famous course there and all the golf pilgrims, the ruins at the St. Andrews Cathedral. This is the kind of hotel we stay in our tours. I was just on the tour, and every night it was a characteristic hotel like this. And the gang would gather in the lobby for their Wi-Fi to get online and let everybody know what's going on. And you have that cozy old world ambience when you stay in these hotels. We're really committed to having cozy, characteristic local hotels rather than sterile, American-style chain hotels in our travels. This is Liz, can you explain how old this is and what it is exactly?
Yeah, this is Iron Age. This is a crannog. In those days, you wanted to be protected, and the way to do that was to be out on a loch, because people moved up and down by water rather than by road in those days. And so this would have been someone who was high up in the hierarchy of those times, would build their settlement out, and we get told all about what happens and how they would have lived, and even a chance to try some of the way of life of people of that age.
And we were met by this man, and sorry for the dark photograph, but there was no lighting back then. What century was this?
This is 1,000 years ago.
1,000 years ago. And this was his day off while we were there, but he likes our groups so much that he suited up and he came down and he gave our tour a walkthrough and demonstrated how to make fire and everything like that on his day off. Do you remember his name? He's a beautiful man.
It's Duncan.
Duncan, yeah, and it just was, I was wonderstruck by watching Duncan make the fire from nothing. And I thought, if you're in drizzly Scotland 1,000 years ago without a match handy, this is a good skill to have. And it was so much ingenuity there, and to be able to see that at this site.
And we had a young couple there with the parents and the son. It's not as easy as it looks to make the fire, so it was sort of a trial to see whether this was good husband material. Could he make the fire or not in front of his future parents-in-law?
I think on our tour, our guy made the fire. That was quite good. Yeah. And then, just lucky, we were in Kenmore when they were having a clan gathering. And not complete luck, because your guide knows what's happening out there, and you will you'll modify your itinerary a little bit, if possible, to hit whatever's going on. Of course, we don't build a whole tour around that, but if there is a clan gathering nearby, we adjusted the itinerary. This was just, a 5-minute walk from our hotel, and we had a beautiful time there celebrating traditional Scottish culture, watching the little girls dance, and seeing the determination in their faces. This was hard work, and it was a lot of fun. And then we went up to the sheep farming place, and this sheep farmer, he is amazing. And he had such a command over sheepdogs and such a love for the soil and the land from where he'd been for several generations. We stopped here, and it was time for us to get a demonstration, and he would blow his whistle, and the dogs would run out and get the sheep together, and then it was a chance for him to show how you shear the sheep in a traditional way, and then some of us to get to try it. Anybody who wanted to try it could. These, for a lot of people, is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see what this sort of slice of the culture is like, And then we were lucky, they just had a whole new litter of baby sheepdogs. They were so little, their eyes were not even open yet. And I'm not a little cute dog person, and I fell in love with these sheepdog, and they fit right into my pocket. And I took them right onto the bus, and then I thought, no, he'll probably know one's missing. But I wanted to take this little guy with us. Liz, what is the shepherd's name again?
Neil.
Neil, yeah. And that is just a delight for us to be able to stop there. And this is something very hard to do on your own. But when you have a guide who knows how exciting it is to go to a farm and actually talk to a man whose family has been in this business for a long time, and not only cuddle with the little baby dogs, but to hear about the struggles they have to keep their livelihood alive in this rough and tumble age today. Then we headed up further north to Inverness, and Inverness, where you can spend a little time in the evening walking around with a local guide and learn about the history there. And this is another example of a great guide. I was just in Inverness having a wonderful time, and Liz discovered that there was a great folk band playing in the hotel next to ours. And Liz physically went around and gathered up almost everybody in our group, finding them all over town, reminding them, great folk evening in the hotel next to ours. Come on in, just get a drink, and you got yourself a wonderful evening. And and to be able to folk dance with somebody, with your tour guide, and with this great music and all the local people there, it was a highlight. And you couldn't even schedule that, but that's how it's nice to have a guide who's hustling so you can check it out. Liz mentioned the Battle of Culloden, the last soil fought on British soil, sort of the last stand of Scottish nationalism. And when you go to Culloden, you'll learn about Bonnie Prince Charlie, and you'll learn what it's like if you have a romantic Scottish nationalist uprising and you happen to be fighting the British, okay? It was not a pretty picture. And what's left is just very close to the soul of Scotland, and to go there and to walk on that battlefield with a local historian to tell the story is quite a powerful experience. And then nearby is a Stone Age type stone site that goes back to, 1,000 years before Christ or something, and then you have a chance to check that out. And while we're enjoying that site, your guide and your bus driver are busy putting together what was called a Taste of Scotland. This is one of the delights, and as I was on this tour, I thought, man, I was blown away by the ancient stone site. And then I go back to the bus, and we've got this banquet of all the Scottish taste treats. Have you been on that one? Oh, man. And you get to drink, what do you get to drink?
Oh, anything that we can put our hands on.
But the local soft drink.
The local soft drink is Ironbrew. We're the only country in the world where there's a soft drink that outsells Coca-Cola. The only thing that has more sugar is a 2-pound bag of sugar.
So, I mean, that's just the kind of delight that it makes every moment of your trip filled with memories and experiences. This is Roddy, our bus driver, and they were a very good team for us for 10 days in Scotland. Liz, can you explain about the Cawdor Castle?
This is Cawdor Castle, your opportunity to go in and visit a castle which is actually still lived in. Cawdor, if you know your Macbeth and your Shakespeare, Thane of Cawdor, the king thereafter, this was Shakespeare, a bit like Braveheart, with artistic license. So it was said to be the curse. The most recent Thane said that it was the curse as to be associated with it. But you can hear about the modern day ongoings between the family feud with the Countess of Cawdor. So lots of stories there.
And in Scotland, as in England, the presentation is so nice. There are so many people who are local, who earn their living going to these historic sites and sharing an insight into them. And they're scattered through the towns and scattered through the sites, answering your questions. And we had enough free time here where I was able to go to the pitch and putt course. And it was a beautiful 9 holes. I'm not much of a golfer, but boy, to have a chance to do a little bit of golfing in Scotland was a treat. And then comes a highlight for a few people, Loch Ness. We come to the Loch Ness, the beautiful lake. This is a geological cut through Scotland, and of course it's got the Loch Ness lore. If you're going to look for the Loch Ness, you might as well go to a great castle to do it. Urquhart Castle was quite impressive. And when you go up into Scotland, you can see the infrastructure of British imperialism. Right, Roy?
I'm not saying a word.
Okay. Because if you're London trying to keep down the Scots, you need roads, don't you? The Romans had great roads, the British had great roads, so you need to have that infrastructure. And London spent a lot of money making roads, making canals, making locks, so that they could have that nice opportunity to keep in touch with people.
If I could just interrupt, Rick. This is a strange illusion, but if one thinks about Star Trek and the fact that the engineer of the Enterprise was Scottish, that was no accident, because some of the great engineers of history were Scottish, and Thomas Telford is one of my personal heroes. He built the Caledonian Canal to connect the east coast of Scotland with the west coast. Largely a white elephant, because by the time it was built it had been surpassed, but nonetheless one of the most prolific road, bridge, harbour, church builders in the world. He built the Gothenburg Canal in Sweden, and one of the great delights is driving through Scotland, and Liz will confirm, and seeing the things that Telford built. But as Rick says, the infrastructure in Scotland was built as a way of really sort of controlling the countryside, but nonetheless also it helped to create the infrastructure through Scotland as well. And Caledonian Canal is wonderful.
If I can just get the last word, the British government may have built the roads, but the roads were used by the Jacobites, the followers of James, as they came to within 100 miles outside London. So the Scots put them to good use.
Wow, I like that. So you'll learn a lot more about that, and you'll get it. So you don't just drive over this canal. You learn about Telford, you learn about infrastructure, you learn about all of this heritage. Then you come into the big mountains, and this is the highest mountains in the British Isles, I believe. And you've got Ben Nevis, and you've got a chance to stop, get out of the bus, enjoy just feeling like you're in the middle of the wilderness. And there are gorgeous views. Your guide knows where you can take a hike and where you can enjoy some memories. And if you see some bagpipers on the side of the road, you very well may be able to stop and actually hear them play. If you see a hairy coo, I think that's Scottish for hairy cow, you'll stop the bus. And I just like this. We run a tight ship. It's very punctual, but you have time then for these wonderful little stops, and your guide knows how you can get out and get a nice little memory of your time in Scotland. Then you get to the west coast, you get some dramatic views, and we come into the town of Oban. I love Oban. It's sort of the gateway to the islands. Very salty place. Our hotel was literally right on the harbor front, facing the harbor, a nice 5-minute walk into the town. And we had a man come in and entertain and sing for us as we were having our dinner. The tour does whatever it can to help you connect with the traditional culture. You've got an entire day dedicated to taking a ride out into the islands. I love this ride because you get to sail on one of the ferries. You get a local farm boy to take you on the bus across the Isle of Mull, telling you all sorts of gossip from that island. And then you land over in Iona, where Christianity came to Scotland from Ireland 1,500 years ago. And this is just drenched in folklore and in history and in religious history. And there's a special ambiance in Iona. There's something about the light. There's something about the history. There's something about the power of the people's faith there on this far fringe of Scotland. And it really is a powerful experience to be able to go to Iona and wander around and get a little sense of that on part of your trip. We're a very well-oiled machine as far as a tour group goes. We can turn on a dime, we pack light, we carry our own luggage. You've got a bus that can get you where you want to get on time and efficiently. It's a big bus with 2 seats per person on average. And on our way back to Edinburgh, we get a stop in Stirling Castle. And that was my first time in Stirling Castle ever, was just this last summer with Liz. And it was a beautiful experience to go to Stirling. We had our group shot there, and all of our friends had a nice final shot before heading on into Edinburgh and enjoying our last meal as a group together in what feels like going home. We had been for a couple of days in Edinburgh at the beginning of the tour, and we come back and we finish our tour in Edinburgh. And it was just a delight for me to be a participant in one of our tours, as I do every year these days, and to see how proud I am to have our guides taking our Rick Steves tours around Europe. So that's what we do for the best 10 days in Scotland. And then you've seen what we did in England. And I hope that gives you a good sense for what our tour program is all about. I've got just a couple of minutes for questions. Is there anything that was not clear or that you'd like to have more information about? Yes. Can you do these back to back? There must be 20 departures for each of these, and you can look at the schedules and see which ones are back to back, but it would be very nice to do them back to back, and my staff can let you know if by chance they work that way, and they would complement each other, that's for sure. I want to remind you, in that tour booklet, there's what we thought we were going to sell. There are many more dates added to that booklet, so there's lots going on. Roy and Liz, you heard what I just said about your tours and where you are experts, and I glossed over things, and I probably got a few things not quite right. Is there anything, Roy, that you would like to add about the England tour?
Just to really reinforce what Rick was saying, remember that Britain is an incredibly small place. It's only 800 miles, mainland Britain, from the very southwest of England to the very north of Scotland. But within that small area are 4 countries with their own history, with their own language, their own culture, and so much concentrated, so much variety, say, in the culture, and I think you'll be absolutely delighted when you do make it to Britain.
And Liz.
And I would just add that 2014 is a very important year for Scotland. Apart from the referendum that we've talked about, we're also hosting the Ryder Cup, we're hosting the Commonwealth Games, and it's the homecoming. So the diaspora of Scots are being drawn home at the year. So 2014, a good year to come.
Thank you guys very much. I want to remind you, I've glossed over a lot of things very quickly. We have our staff in the lobby, and they'll be happy to answer any of your questions about what's going on today. Liz and Roy are going to do a little interview for our streaming audience for a few minutes, and then they're going to go down to the tour cantina. You can find the tour cantina just down the street where all the crowds are, and that's where you can go to talk more about the tours. I'd like to thank our streaming audience for tuning in today, and remind you we've got a lot of classes going until the end of the day today. And I would like to thank Roy and Liz very much for helping us out today. Roy and Liz, thank you guys. Thank you all for traveling with us. Enjoy your day here. Okay, happy travels.
That was Rick Steves talking about his Best of England and Best of Scotland tours. Up next at 1 p.m. Pacific time is Tara Swenson, and she'll give us a slideshow lecture about Rick Steves' Best of Germany, Austria, and Switzerland tours. But first, let's take a few minutes to interview our great guides from Scotland and England. Thanks for being here. So, Liz Lister, it's nice to have you here. Can you just tell us where you're from and which tours you lead?
Okay, I'm born and bred in Scotland, and I live and guide there, and this is my second career, and I'm passionate about introducing people to my home country.
Now, what was your first career?
My first career was in education. I was involved in recruiting students from across the world to come and study in Scotland. So an ambassador for Scotland, I wanted to learn more.
Thing. That's interesting. Now, Liz, Rick Steves' Best of Scotland tour seemed to go to so many interesting places. Can you tell us a few of your favorites?
Well, every day I have a joke with the people on my coach that every day is my favourite day. But if I have to narrow it down, my favourite day would be the day when we travel across from Oban across to Iona. We take a ferry and we're travelling across in time. So when we travel across the Isle of Eagles, which is Mull, we're looking to spot sea eagles, golden eagles, otters. Beautiful bus journey across for about an hour, and then we take a 10-minute journey back in time to the tranquil, serene island of Iona. And there, that was where Christianity came to Scotland with St Columba. And there's a variety of things that people can do. Visit the abbey, visit the oldest medieval nunnery. The ruins are so tranquil. Take a walk through. Only 175 residents. And as you walk up the main village, you're walking back in time, and you're following the route of the pilgrims through crosses, the Celtic crosses, visiting the abbey or visiting the beautiful white shell sands of Iona.
So tour members have a bit of free time to explore those areas?
Absolutely. We give them the options in advance. We gather again on the pier to get the ferry back, and in those few minutes we're looking for Columba's tears, little stones which are flecked with green marble as a little souvenir of their trip to Iona.
Oh, how fabulous. That sounds wonderful. Now, you've been a guide for a number of years, but we've heard that last summer was the first time you ever led a full-time Scotland tour for Rick Steves. And it happened to be that Rick Steves himself was one of your first tour members. Now, was that just a little bit intimidating for you? And what was it like to travel with Rick?
It was a baptism of fire, but I think ignorance is bliss. I didn't really know Rick Steves because in Europe he's not the phenomenon that he is in the US. And so it was my first tour. It was just like, bring it on. He was wonderful to have. The tour members were so supportive that they were so much on my side that they were lovely. And I survived it. And as I've been saying to people, in a few weeks' time, I'm hoping that I'll come off the medication.
Now, were your tour members surprised to see him?
Yes, some of them are so into Rick that they already knew that the tour member called Rick Romstead, they knew that that was a family name, so they'd already clocked it and were ahead of the game. But for others, it was a complete surprise. So the manager of the hotel described how one lady was sitting working on the computer in the foyer. When she saw him out of the corner of her eye walk past, did a double take, walked up the stairs, walked back down again. Are you Rick Steves? So it took some by surprise.
Oh, how interesting. Well, Roy Nichols, welcome. Thank you for being
Welcome.
here. Now, can you tell us a bit about yourself and the tours you lead for Rick?
Well, I live in a little village called Chillingstone in the county of Dorset in southern England, about 120 miles southwest of London. I trained as an archaeologist many years ago, and I do both the England-Wales tour now, the Scotland tour, the London tour. I've also ventured out into Europe the last 2 or 3 years as well.
How exciting. Now, you just said you have this passion for archaeology, this history working in archaeology. Can you tell us about a place on Rick's Best of England tour where connecting the tour members and archaeology is particularly fun?
Well, it's always been a great delight doing this particular job, because being an archaeologist, we visit many, many archaeological sites, not just in Europe, but also particularly in Britain. One can think of Avebury and Hadrian's Wall, but probably of all of the sites, the one that is certainly my most favourite is the Caernarfon. Now, this is a site to the east of Inverness in Scotland. There are a series of what we call passage graves, Neolithic monuments that are about 2.5 to 3,000 years ago, that were really a place to inter the dead, but also sites of ritual. And what's fascinating about it is that it's a very intimate site. You can walk amongst these passage graves. I can connect with the tour members and tell them about the history, but also the way that our ancestors lived, the way they expressed themselves and the way they lived and died. It was such an integral part of their lives, and it's a wonderful site to do that.
Seems like a perfect site where having a tour guide lead you through it makes it all the more richer than if you're an independent traveler.
Of course, because it's not just the information, but one can read the history, but it's the interpretation, how the sites were used. And that's so very, very important, because there are so many subtleties. And I think that's the thing that I try and pass on to our visitors.
Interesting. Well, I've heard that you are now you've been continuously guiding for Rick Steves longer than any other active tour guide, which is crazy. And how many years has that been?
26 years.
I'm sorry to out you that way, but
He started when he was 10.
yeah.
Oh, bless you, Liz. Bless you.
Well, as Rick's tour program has grown, and from your perspective, how has it changed, or how has it stayed the same?
In the early days, I was both the driver and the guide. We used minibuses, and we would have 10 or 12 people. So now we've moved on to coaches. Of course, that has changed a great deal. But in essence, I don't think it has changed, because although faces might have changed, people we deal with, some of the B&Bs that we go to, different people or different B&Bs, but the sites are the same. The romance, the history, the people, all of those things still stay the same. And it's that joy that I still get. A lot of friends have always said to me, do you not get bored by going to these same places? But if I go to the Caernarfon or Hadrian's Wall or Bath or London 5 or 6 times a year, it's not onerous at all. It's a constant delight.
I bet it's fun to see new tour members be delighted over and over and over again.
And that is it, is knowing that every time I have a tour, it'll be somebody new that have never seen these sites, and you see the delight and the interest that they have in these places.
Wow, interesting. Well, I guess this is a question for both of you, but can you have a little discussion between the two of you of the variety of places you take people on your tours, and maybe some favorites or places that surprise people?
I was just going to comment on that from what Roy was saying, that for every tour member, they're looking for something different. So for some that are passionate about collies, it might be the visit to the sheepdogs. For other with archaeology, it might be the visit to Caernarfon. It's different for everyone. But what is common to all is that what they take away as memories are the experiences rather than the sights. It's soaking up a taste of Scotland or hearing bagpipes being played next to a beautiful Scottish loch.
And all of the tours have wonderful variety. We stay in large cities, Bath, London. We go to country areas like the Cotswolds and the Lake District. We see historic sites. We see contemporary museums. So there's so much variety that goes with it. And it is one of those great delights that there is so much variety, and one of the reasons why I keep doing it.
Interesting. Now, but if you had to pick a particular town or a particular museum that you haven't already discussed, that people are like, I didn't know that was going to be so great.
For me, the British Museum is still one of the great highlights. It's one of the great museums of the world. There's so much to see. It would take you something like 6 weeks just to study all of the rooms. But also I love going to the Lake District. It's one of the great highlights. And it is that variety of countryside and town that really does make it interesting.
And one thing that I would point out, in Scotland, the public museums are free of charge. So you can pop into a museum and just, if the weather changes, we say in Scotland, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. So for that 5 minutes, you could pop into a museum and see some, and then pop out again. But some of our other museums, like Britannia, are a real experience. Those are private. There's an entry fee for that, but well worth a visit to a well-guided tour of Britannia.
Interesting.
And that's true of all the great national museums throughout Britain, be it in London or Bath or York. Museums that are national museums are all free to the public.
So
they're seen as a resource for everyone.
Well, so London tends to sound like such an expensive city, and in so many ways it is. But if your sightseeing is free, or virtually can be free.
The British Library, the National Gallery, the National Portrait Gallery, the British Museum, the Tate, all of these are free museums, and it's the same in Edinburgh, as Liz was saying.
As you come as a tourist, it's about seeing, but it's about total immersion. It's not just the sights, it's about the sounds, the smells, the tastes that makes up the full package.
Sure. Well, so, there's been this long time reputation of Scotland and England not having the best food. But I've also heard that has changed drastically over the number of years. And can you give us some particular experiences where you have great meals on these tours?
Well, in Scotland, when we go to Edinburgh, there's also some wonderful museums there. But I think this reputation that Britain gained for bad food really was a post-war issue. And throughout the 60s and 70s, it was still true. But there's this great revival in British food in the last 20 or 30 years. And whether you go to a little country inn in the Cotswolds, whether you go to a city restaurant in Edinburgh, a restaurant in London, a pub in York, again, I think you'll be surprised by the variety and the quality of the food that you'll have.
And food and drink is one of our major industries in Scotland. It's one of our 5 major industries. So from Scottish salmon, Scottish seafood, if you travel to mull mussels, to the beef, Aberdeen Angus beef is world renowned. So we have the quality of ingredients, and we now have the chefs to make the most of the quality of those ingredients. So Edinburgh, for example, has the highest concentration of Michelin-starred chefs outside London.
Really?
So, this reputation for oats and more oats is really one of the past.
Well, and not to mention the Scotch and the great whiskey. I mean, there's obviously lots to drink when you're in that part of the world.
Unfortunately, we do have a reputation for poor diet as well. We deep fry everything.
Oh.
So we also dip our haggis in batter and fry them. We're even known to deep fry Mars bars. So if you're into those kind of delicacies, and then you have the iron brew to thin out your blood and lower the cholesterol.
Iron brew? What's that?
Iron brew is a drink that outsells Coca-Cola in Scotland.
Really?
So it's said to be made from girders, iron bars.
And it's a soda or it's
a fruit-flavoured soda. It's very
sakes.
orange. I'm sure that if you put sheep's wool into it, it would come out dyed orange.
That's hilarious. Now, how much time of your year do you spend on the road? People are always curious about the life of a tour guide.
Well, I have quite a busy season, so I'll start in late April or early May and go through till October and November, with some breaks, obviously, during the summer months. And the autumn, winter then is for resting and study and stuff like that. But yes, really from April through till November.
Wow. And are you as busy?
I only do extended tours with Rick Steve, so I do one a month, and then I do local guiding for the rest of the season.
How fascinating. So if there's anything that you would want to tell our potential tour members, why they should pick coming to England or Scotland over Italy or France if they were planning to go to Europe, what would you tell them?
I think Britain has a familiarity about it. For a lot of North Americans, because of the knowledge of Britain through books and films, it's almost like coming home. And of course, if you've got Scottish ancestry or English ancestry, it is coming home in every sense of the word. And I think it's that familiarity, but at the same time, we are foreign countries, and there is so much variety in this small little island of ours, and I think that's the secret. So much concentrated in a very, very small area.
I would just echo that. I mean, Scotland is one of the most diverse geologies, and from that, diverse landscapes, also skyscape, because in Scotland, anyone who comes to visit Scotland can't help but be impacted upon by the beautiful skies.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a magical place. I have not been there yet. It's going to be high on my bucket list. So thanks so much for being here with us.
Look forward to welcoming you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And, next up, we're going to be with Tara Swenson and going to Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Stay tuned.